Hi, everyone. This is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership. And today I have two very special guests. One I know very well from days in hospitality, and the other I've had a chance to meet here in the last couple of months. So let's start with you, Rachel. Tell us a little bit about yourself, all the years in hospitality, but I don't know that people really understand your vision for women in general and leadership. But go ahead and give us a brief background about yourself.
No, I appreciate it, Greg. I have had two incredible careers. The first as a trial lawyer. I spent just over 20 years representing small to mid-sized businesses, doing a lot of corporate work in the courtroom. Through that, I had an entrance into hospitality, representing a lot of franchisees in their negotiations, in their litigation, in their terminations, impact, whatever else, and a lot of their supplier agreements. Really loved it. Started speaking at a lot of conferences because there are not a lot of franchisee attorneys
Right.
out there that represent just franchisees. But one day woke up and did not love it anymore, which came as a
Mhm.
huge surprise. I thought I would die in a courtroom, and walked away. And I took some time to regroup and think. And I had an opportunity to visit with someone I knew a little bit who was an association executive, not in hospitality. And she said, you know what, there's a lot of traits that we have as trial lawyers in common. I didn't know the phrase, and I saw that AHOA, who I knew very well, was looking for someone to help them with their franchise relations. And I had an opportunity to meet with Chip Rogers, who was the president and CEO at the time. He
Yeah.
created a tremendous role for me. I spent just over 6 years with AHOA, starting in franchise relations and then finishing up as chief operating officer with a CEO, interim CEO title at one point. And then again, had the opportunity to retire in August of last year. And I'm enjoying, I guess, what is now the third chapter of my hospitality career, which is finding causes, organizations, groups, people that
Hmm.
mean a lot to me, that I am passionate about the work they are doing, that I can surround myself with good people who are very committed to what they're doing, which is how I got to spend some time with Thrive. And so right now I'm just splitting my time between different efforts on women, elevating women in hospitality. So thank you for having me, and just delighted to be able to share in what we're doing now.
Yeah, and for those of you not in the hospitality industry, Rachel referred to AHOA, and that's the Asian American Hotel Owners Association. And in general, 70% plus or minus of all franchise hotels are coming from that membership, and it's incredible. A lot of folks say, "Oh, there's a Marriott. Mr. Marriott must own that," or "There's a Hilton. Mr. Hilton may own it," and just not the case. But I can't help but hear you've always had a servant heart.
I have, it comes from a lot of things. It comes from family and other influences who spent a long time giving back in the community, watching that with my parents, my grandparents, but really just being raised with values that when you have good fortune, that it
Absolutely.
is not just incumbent on you, but you want to share that good fortune with others. And so,
Mm,
I've had great success in two careers as a woman, and there's a lot of incredibly talented, deserving women out there who
amen.
need a jump start. So if I
Yeah.
can have any role in helping to make that happen, then that feels good to me.
Yeah, speaking of putting together an organization to help women in the hospitality, let's introduce Silvia Camarado. Um, Silvia, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing currently in your corporate role, but obviously we want to hear all about Women in Travel Thrive, and what was your thought around that and your heart putting that together.
Thank you, Greg. First of all, huge thank you to you and the Aden leadership community to having us on here. Really appreciate your partnership with Women in Travel Thrive. So that's first and foremost.
Thank you.
Um, but like you mentioned, I do have a corporate job. My first job that I've had actually for a while now. For the last 12 years, I've been leading in a group of account managers in a company called Expedia Group. So many may be familiar with company Expedia. We are pretty big, large global online travel agency. So really well plugged into the travel space and kind of the infrastructure. So I've been with them, like I mentioned, over 12 years and really enjoy the role that I am in. That said, there was part of me that felt quite empty about 2 years ago, and what had happened as everyone knows now. And we went through just sort of the depth of COVID when, the one piece that always brought me joy was connecting with our travel partners, our, connections in the lodging and, different travel verticals too. But my team was particularly close to all the different lodging partners, and we would go out and meet them, and we would go to industry conferences, and we would always have this community, and whether it was men and women, etc. But the one thing that I started to recognize during the midst of COVID is that the pain was real when we started seeing at the rate at which women were particularly leaving the industry and leaving the workforce altogether. And that was for various reasons, right? That was due to the obvious already inequity that exists between men and women as they hold their permanent jobs, or the childcare issues. And it was the 4 times multiple that really made us think, as we saw, a lot of people depart. We had layoffs at probably every single type of company that I can think of within the industry. It was really, really painful to see. And I started to reach out first within our group, in Expedia group. We had a really strong connections and bonds and mentorship programs, etc. And I was thinking to myself, like, we have to take it outside. We have to bridge the gap between the different companies that are out there, whether it's a Hilton or Hyatt or all partners out there that are probably thinking and going through the same thing, is that how can I have somebody to lean on in these really trying times? And then we wanted to have that conversation continue through a very purposeful mentorship or connection type of introduction. So it wasn't just me, although I was really the catalyst. And I remember at that time going to a mentor of mine who probably you may know too, Melissa Mayer. She was at that time leading our industry relations, marketing, I&D efforts in Expedia Group. And I said, what do you think of this? And she's like, let's do it. And I just remember at that point thinking, like, all right, then I have to do it. She told me I have to do it. I have to. Next time I talk to her, I'm gonna have to show something.
Yeah.
So I actually always tell her this story because she certainly held me accountable, if I may. But I did bring some of these women along. Some of them were my colleagues in Expedia Group, and few were just people that, again, women that I knew that were probably thinking the same. I remember reaching out to a close industry colleague and friend at that time, Claudia Infante, works for Margaritaville, and she remembers saying, and she told me back then, she's like, I'm done baking bread. I'm done. We need to do something about it. We need to put this out there. We need to create day of impact. We need to bring these women together, create the connection. So that's how the organization was born. It was in 2020. And since then, we have really grown our community tremendously. We are pretty large. We have a pretty large presence in different social platforms. We have a community where women can find themselves and do a piece of leadership or volunteerism. We have some amazing advisors like Rachel now joining us and giving us a little bit of feedback on how we can take this and continue to make impact and really continue to raise awareness of the regression that women faced, but also are still facing. So really trying to close the gap by providing some of these tangible resources to women.
Shout out to Margaritaville. Tell you what, that organization has just taken off. And my boys and I were fortunate enough to visit the one in Orlando a few years ago. And the other 2 organizations that are right next door, right? Universal Studios and Disney. And guess where they had the most fun? Not because there were less lines, but because you could actually do something on a regular basis. And it was a blast. And so I have to ask, Silvia, how did you find Rachel, or how did Rachel either find you or say, hey, how can I help you? What happened next?
Well, I'll share my perspective and Rachel jump in, but I still remember that, reaching out to Ahoa, we were, early on, we were thinking, how do we craft really strategic partnerships with different organizations that are existing that, potentially we can raise the awareness of our voice. We did have at that time one of the Day of Impacts, and we have Jagrudi, who at that time, I believe, was an executive there with Ahoa as well. speak on one of our panels, and it was wonderful. And sort of immediately we connected. And I remember getting on the call with Rachel, and the one thing I just have to say I admired about you, Rachel, because you were like, yes, let's do it. Let's craft the partnership. And here's the benefits we can offer. She gave us a template. She said, let's go. You're going to get some access to the AHOA Con. You're going to, we'll put an article together. We'll obviously create some reciprocity with Women in Travel Thrive. And so AHOA, I'm really grateful, because not only you provided us sort of the template on how we can work with other organizations, but just provided us like really, actionable, tangible things that we were able to execute on immediately.
Yeah. Rachel, does that sound familiar? Is that how it happened?
Yeah, I mean, in leading industry relations for AHOA, you never, there's no sense reinventing the wheel. Thrive was onto something. It made perfect sense. The pandemic, of course, really brought the industry together from a stronger together standpoint. Thrive was very new at the time. And I do remember our first conversation, and they had something great to offer. Jag Rudy was, of course, the AHOA chairwoman at the time, Panwala. And we decided to partner at that time. And then after I retired, as I mentioned, when I was really looking for ways to spend my time that I thought could be impactful, I remembered that conversation with Silvia and reached out to her again then and said, I have a little bit more free time now than I had before. And let's talk about what we can do together. And through that, both devoting time to Thrive, but also Thrive is one of the founding members of the Women in Hospitality Leadership Alliance that we shared publicly this week.
Beautiful.
But we've been working together since November to bring those organizations together to really amplify everybody's messaging and move the needle a little bit farther and faster. And I think Silvia mentions a great point. While the pandemic may or may not wind down at some point, the impacts of women in the industry are going to last into the long future. For all of the women who've either left the industry altogether or were furloughed, or who took pauses in promotions or switching careers, where a lot of new hires were put on hold, that's going to have an incredible impact on the future of female leadership. So Thrive being able to provide resources and really reignite that is such an important part of the industry.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of AHOA and what you all just created in the Alliance, there's a lot of powerful women in AHOA who have a voice. And I just interviewed Nancy Patel from Corpus Christi, Texas yesterday. And I spent 17 years at IHG and knew Nancy and her family early on when they moved to Texas. And tell you what, you need anything done in that region, she's certainly a big fan. So tell me about your dreams, Silvia. If you could just share it just briefly. I know why now Thrive was built, but what are your dreams for the organization, and what do you really want people to hear when you speak of the organization? And secondly, what do you want us to do? How can we help you? How can we serve Thrive? And I mean men, women, graduate students, people that are retiring. What do you want? I know it's a big question, but
it is loaded, but I definitely have given it a lot of thoughts. And by the way, we do continue to think about it, right? The reality is we're not in depth of COVID, so the impact is changing. And now it's about what do we do to sort of close the gap, at the various levels and so forth. So actually, we had a fantastic conversation with our advisory board and Rachel, and we have some amazing women there: Laura Kalin from Oracle, Noreen Henry, Melissa Mayer. So wonderful group of women. But I think beyond that, my passion, and I think there's probably some things that I really wanted to keep very pristine from beginning. One, that this is a true 501c3 charity. So this is not an organization that is for profit. So we are absolutely nonprofit organization. We intend to give every single penny back that we can. And we've done so through some concept called empowerment bundles. And just to really quickly describe them to those of your listeners, that they're essentially packages either for growth or re-entry into the industry. So that was in consideration of those that have left, potentially coming back, right? Still rethinking, okay, maybe this is the time to come back to the industry, and thinking about what are some of the tangible pieces there. So one of the things, obviously, that these packages or bundles would give would be things like interview skills, or a little bit of a coaching in preparation for that interview, headshots, things that are really tangible, like resume writing services. And I know these are things that everyone would want. So when we created these packages, and there, Greg, I know we tapped you for some assistance, and I'm super grateful for you to provide some of the coaching services to those recipients. These have been super valuable, and my goal or my wish is to accelerate that effort and to do that really, really well. And that's through help of corporations, those that can help to fund us. So that's where we need that help. And last to mention is that this is completely barrier-free organization. So there are no membership fees. We are anyone can join, whether it's through our Slack chats, and we have a little Slack community kind of happening, or it is just following us on LinkedIn, or is it signing up to some of these other resources? Like we have this free match system where every month or every other month, depending what you select, we can sort of pair you up with another industry professional and give back in that way. So how do we maintain ourselves, barrier free, and how do we continue to give back is probably the two big goals that I would have. It is sometimes challenging because we've been sort of powered by volunteers, often with those that have multiple hats and jobs and everything.
Right. Oh, by the way.
But we're working on it.
Yeah. Rachel, when you hear Silvia share what her vision is, her dreams, and you obviously on the advisory board, how do you share with me and anyone else listening and going to be watching later? How can we help? How can others tangibly? I mean, honestly,
I think there's a lot of things. Thrive has the most committed, the most dedicated, talented group of volunteers I've ever been around. And that is going to get exhausting for them to keep that pace. So the more great volunteers we have, the better. I would encourage people who are interested to volunteer for something. There's lots of different ways of getting involved. Certainly, if you're talking about businesses, companies that have skills to help with those empowerment bundles, whether it is actual skills or sponsoring bundles. I know when the Alliance met for the first time in the Castell project, stepped up and sponsored bundles instantly. And that makes such a huge difference because, as Silvia mentioned, we are a nonprofit. We are funded by donations, and it all goes back to the people who need it. So, that's certainly another way to share resources. If you have a company or a nonprofit that has resources that you think would be helpful for the people who follow Thrive, then share with us. There's no sense reinventing that wheel. We're at a time where human resources and financial resources are so strapped that sharing and collaborating, and we're all looking for the same thing at the end of the day. There's so many ways to get involved there. As Silvia mentioned, there's networking. Show up at some of the pop-up events that Thrive has, or introduce yourself at a conference if you see Thrive people there, and just let us know that you're watching what we're doing. But you will be better for it. Thrive will be better for it. It's just such a great opportunity to get involved.
Yeah, I also hear a lot of like-minded, like-hearted people joining as members, and then the people who are advising and the volunteers that you mentioned. And it's a blessing. There's so many people out there willing to help you and your vision. So if you're someone listening to this as a woman who is either they're not getting what they want from work, or they're not in the workplace right now, or they were in the industry and thinking about coming back. And in the fourth audience, I'm not in the industry. Why would I want to join hospitality? Do you believe Women in Travel Thrive could actually share their vision with a young woman who's graduating from college or working somewhere else? How might what you're doing influence that young heart to join the industry just because of what it is you're doing?
I mean, Silvia, if I may, I will say that when you look around the Thrive community, there is a group of people who have incredibly different paths. Many of us did not start out dedicated to hospitality. Some went to hospitality school, some are on the real estate side, others on a supplier side, owner side. So it is a career that has so many different paths and different opportunities to have, careers in finance, in real estate, in marketing, in sales. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. So I think that the Thrive volunteers alone are the embodiment of what a career in hospitality can be. I think that's why Silvia and the original group that had such a vision knows how passionate they are about the industry, how much they love being in it, and want to both keep others and bring others into an industry that, Greg, you've been in for a long time as well,
Yeah.
provides tremendous opportunity.
A lot of people think hospitality is a hotel or a restaurant or a concierge or something. And as you well pointed out, Rachel, there's so many things that make the hospitality space thrive, frankly. And Laura's conversation yesterday, I mean, she asked, when she was with Micros and Opera, I mean, everybody who's in the space knows, how simple it made everybody to communicate electronically around charges within a hotel, but not everybody knows the name. They just know what her and her company created. Silvia, what say you to that same question I asked Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of that aspirational answer, which is something like, travel is a force for good. And the industry is super special in that sense. And I mean, and hospitality is all kind of around us, in this space. I actually would want to understand from you, because I feel like your leadership series and everything that you've been doing is kind of bringing, again, especially the young people to the next level. You are also very passionate about it. Maybe you can sort of connect the dots for the audience here, because I think we're all trying to do the same. One, of course, retain the wonderful talent in this industry and making sure they do grow and they have the opportunity, and particularly the marginalized communities. So,
Sure.
that's the piece that we're obviously focused on women, and to an even greater degree, when you start looking at intersectionality within the gender gap space, that's I think it's even something more impactful to be doing. But I'd love to hear
Well,
from you
yeah,
too, because,
thank you.
how we can cross collaborate there.
You bet. Well, when Rachel said when she said I left the legal field and wanted to do something different, I didn't hear someone who wasn't fulfilled as a human being. I heard someone who said I might have finished this chapter. And that's how I felt when I resigned from IHG in October of 2013. And I was at the top of the game, a regional vice president with 5 brands, 7 people, 24 states. I mean, who gives up that job? Well, I did, because I realized there was more to life than helping people buy and sell franchises. And building wealth wasn't critical to me. And I had been studying leadership my entire career at IHG. I just didn't know it. I was listening to management and leadership and the vast differences between those two words, much less how you show up as a manager versus a leader. So with that, I created Aden Leadership, a consulting firm that helps leaders become better leaders. Now, it sounds all encompassing and really simple, but I've also realized that if you want to get better at leading other human beings, then you will. But that takes intention and that takes work. So my goal is to reach people who want to grow as a man, as a woman, as a human being, and as a leader. And I've actually realized, Silvia, the significant connection between being a parent and being a leader. At 48 years old, I had my first child. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, but it just happened that way. And then we had another one as well. But so I'm blessed to have an 11 and 13-year-old, and I've learned more about being a man and a parent from my 2 kids than I have any certification I could ever receive. But to the point where, what else can I do? And you may know, in April, we had a leadership development series, and it focused on the vision of young and emerging leaders, not millennials, but the young and emerging leaders, because there's a lot of them out there. And another very important topic to me, and maybe it's because of who I married last May, Tammy Fisher, women in leadership just rose to the top. What are we really doing to hear what women need to be in leadership? What are we really hearing from women that are thriving in leadership? And how can we put all that together so they wake up and go, wait a minute, I am a leader too. Even though I have manager or supervisor or regional vice president on my title, how are you being a leader? And so I've dedicated what I consider the rest of my life to helping leaders become better. And when I heard about Thrive, thank you, Rachel, I said, gosh, there's got to be a connection here. How can I help? How can I serve? And whether it's connecting them to a plan to become a better leader, or being connected to someone I know sounds, feels, looks like, that's my why. So Uh,
Greg, I think you actually raise a good point, if I may, when you were talking about your kids. When you ask about the why, I have two daughters. I have a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old. And if I think for 1 second that they don't think they can be anything they want to be in this world, then I'm not doing my job and as a mom. And
right.
so it's my role as in a hospitality industry, part of this community, if I can help make sure that everyone's daughters feel like they have a path in this industry to whatever it is they want to be, then that's a huge part of the why. And I think that any of us who are her parents, but I think you raised such a good point that it's a combination of what we can be in our hospitality communities, but also how we feel in our family community.
Amen. And Sylvia, I love your perspective on the connection between parenting and leadership as well. And I would say that when we pretend that we have two lives, work life and a home life, and we talk about work-life balance, which I don't believe in. I believe you have two eyes, one nose, one mouth, one heart. And when you tell me you have two of them or four of them, then come see me, because it's just not true. But we can be a you know what at work, and everyone loves us, and then we come home and we're another you know what, no one likes us because we don't have any time for them. I'm thinking, where's the integrity in that? Where's the consistency? And honestly, I tell my leaders and my kids all the time, I know you're not listening, but I know you're watching. And then we're watching our parents. We've watched our parents for years. We watch our leaders and how they example good leadership. We tend to either want to be like them or mimic them, and we end up being like them. And so why not example good traits of being a great leader? And that's really the question I ask everyone who is silly enough to work with me, because I'm challenging, but in a loving way. And I say it right up front, I'm not for everyone. But I'm listening to what you want to do, and I'm going to help you get there. And my next question is, when do you want to start? Because a lot of people have a great idea, Sylvia, just like you did. You could have talked about it for months and months and months, but Melissa said, let's do it. Rachel said, let's do it. And you said, and I love it, because you knew that people were holding you accountable to doing something you said you wanted to accomplish. And God bless you. Because a lot of people have great ideas, Sylvia, but they don't do anything about it.
Yeah, and Greg, you're so right. I mean, I'm a parent as well. I have a 12-year-old daughter whom I also want to see a better future, and we should always be better than the generation before, right? And a 9-year-old son, and they are watching. You're right. They are looking at us as role models. They're seeing, mom that is doing a little bit more than just, again, quote unquote, her day job, and
Yeah.
why is she doing that, and seeing kind of the bigger picture in all of this. And then, it's interesting because the parallels are everywhere, right? I just feel like in my day job, and I tend to remove a lot of roadblocks for my team. I have a very large team. I have about 130 people on my team, and they're my children too, to some
Sure.
extent. And then, I flip it to my home life, and I have these children, and I also want to remove the roadblocks, but maybe the roadblocks look a little bit different, particularly for my female daughter, right? That I know what I experienced kind of trying to climb the ladder through my career, and the perceptions that are out there. I was reading recently just an interesting podcast around competence and likability for women and how they're perceived. There was a lot of Harvard studies done around this, and these are
Yeah.
things that these microaggressions and perceptions that we want to remove from hopefully society by the time they are out there going for jobs. And it is getting better. I feel like the Generation Z, they are just so interplugged. But they're also hungry. They're getting the data from everywhere, right? I mean, they can be on a device and reading something and doing 3 or 4 things at the same time. But our work isn't done until we do everything we possibly can do to make their lives better.
And I'd like to just ask, of the 130 people on your team, how many people are you really leading, so they, and whether it's 8, 9, 10, can actually turn around then and lead those 130? And I'm guessing there's 10 plus or minus that, quote unquote, report to you, and you trust them, right? You example for them, they turn around and example for them. So ultimately, you can't escape the eye and the interest of what Sylvia is doing. But I bet you a dime to donut, then you trust the other people that report directly to you to do their job, right? Man or woman.
Well, I would be missing out if I didn't say really openly that I had actually several leaders that were directly reporting to me or just,
Sure.
in my organization that actually right away jumped on this effort with me and to help with execution. I can think of Ali Thompson. She just moved on from Expedia, is now at Salesforce, and Heidi Bodalia that's still on our Expedia group team. And we have Becca Glenn. We have several really amazing leaders that we're within my kind of smaller group and Shannon Jones that also moved on, and Melissa Navarre. There was a small group of us that kind of took it further, and I'm probably missing some folks too, but it just, to your point, one of my other favorite sayings, and I know it's somewhat of a cliche, but it's about paying it forward. When you get to
Absolutely.
a certain level, and Greg, sounds like you had experienced that epiphany in your career, and Rachel, you experienced that, right? It's about like, okay, well, it's the monetary motivation. Sure, of course, we need certain level of kind of nourishment for ourselves, but what can we give back? What can we pay forward at this point? So again, those that surround us or are coming in back of us, can really experience that really great place. So that to me is leadership.
Well, no one I know, with few exceptions, has paid it forward as well as Rachel. And the heart in which she shows up, the making it simple for people to follow her. And that's the beauty. What I've come to appreciate about just the few times that we've had on the phone is it, Greg, what do you want? How can I help? Here's what I recommend. How about if I do this? What are your thoughts? And she's leading the conversation, but with such a graceful intention. Why can't more of us be like that? And I have the answer, but I'd like for either of you just to give me your 2 cents, because what Rachel doesn't have, too many leaders hang on to. And you know what I'm talking about, but why can't more of us lead with grace and intention like Rachel does?
Oh, Greg, that's very kind.
It's true.
I don't know that I
I
don't
do
know
it
that
for a living. I know what
but
I see.
I know.
So thank you. And I tell you, you show up that way, but you have no ego. You're not full of narcissism. You're not full of anything other than your heart and your head show up first. And
I'm going
there's
to
too
call
many.
Greg every single day too. Greg's giving me my alarm clock. Greg, I think
Motivational quote.
you say kind things, but I think at the end of the day, and I was going to mention this earlier, this hospitality community is a community of relationship building. And it is a community that when I call people, they answer the phone. And when they call me, I answer the phone, because we are all looking to help
Mhm.
one another to advance the industry, to advance the companies we work for, whatever it is, the places we volunteer. And I think that that's another thing that makes it such a special career path
Yeah.
is people in this industry are driven to help each other, whether it's on a business connection or a personal connection or a volunteer effort or a sponsorship or whatever that may, referring people to the leadership development day, whatever those things are, we all want to help each other. And I think that
Mhm.
that's an incredible part of hospitality and why you have chosen a path that you've chosen, while Silvia has the 2 paths that she has, because she really benefits from her own personality, which is to reach out and be a helper and be a servant leader, both within her day job, her paying job, and then her volunteer job, which quite frankly, she probably puts equal time into some weeks. I know, for so many people who want to be involved and thrive, it is literally turning off your day job at 6, 7, 8, depending on what time zone you're in, and then starting to pick up your commitments to thrive. And so I think that when you talk about getting down to business, that may just be efficiencies, operational efficiencies, but it really is more about just the relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the spectrum is there, Greg. I mean, you mentioned like, why can more people be like Rachel, or maybe people can do more stuff like Sylvia or whatever. And one thing that I've learned in working with volunteers quite a bit is that we need to be kind. I think we need to lead with kindness and empathy. I think a lot of people have a lot of will and want, and they have the right intention. And then life happens. So I think we just need to stay open. My other nice saying is, look, give as little or as much as you want or can, right?
Right.
and just and that seemed to have kind of resonated with some people that were like almost embarrassed, like I just don't have as much time, but I can do this, right? And then that seems to sort of resonate. And Rachel is at a stage of her life where she's like, look, I have a little time and I'm willing to
Mhm.
do X, Y, and Z. And so it's I think it's okay as long as I think we can all do something is maybe my takeaway from all of that, whether it's just being a friend and being an ally in your conversations with others, or just being or if you can just give a little back, pay it forward.
Yeah, and what I was saying, Rachel, is there's, as you both know, there's a huge difference between competencies and who you're being and how you're showing up. And I focus more on the latter because I believe everyone can learn something, learn a skill. But again, grace and intention is not a competency. Grace and intention is a core part of who you are. And more people, if they have the empathy of, okay, well, where's Silvia coming from? It's not about me. What does she want? What does she need? And what can I do? So I'm listening. And I'm listening with my eyes too. And that's something that is I hope never gets lost on the people who want to be better communicators. You cannot listen to someone if you're looking at something else. And I mean a phone, a computer, somebody else in the restaurant. And those simple skills are transferable from being a good human being to a great leader. And again, I believe there's a lot of smart people out there. But what my saying is, what else do you want to talk about? And in my world, it's about talking about how do you want to lead people the way you say you want to show up for them? Because there's some incongruencies that are going on out there that need a lot of uh, shortening of the gap, so to speak. But then I'm like you, Sylvia. I have a day job. I'm an executive coach, and I have a lot of people who I coach on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And oh, by the way, I have this thing called Leadership Development Series. And I did it because I believe, and it's a nonprofit, it's called Leadership Development Day. And I believe that if I can raise awareness around what we're trying to do 3, 4, 5 years from now, there could be 2 or 3 other people just carrying it on to, to the sunset, so to speak. I have no intention in doing this for 10 years because at almost 60, I'm ready to spend more time with, the most beautiful woman I've ever met, as I have already mentioned, Tammy. So things are all aligned. And I will leave you with this question. How can you align with the people that are out there listening to this? And who else do you want to help you? Do you have any targeted organizations or any targeted types of people that are, and I want to bring in, it's Women in Travel Thrive, but I honestly believe if we can get some of the men out there who have their head in their arse, or don't care, or don't think it's important, or women figure it out for themselves, all of those opinions, how do we connect with them and say, are you listening? Are you really seeing what the women in travel want and need, and hospitality leaders that might be out to lunch? How do we reach them? And it's a big question, maybe a whole nother podcast, but I'm very curious.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it is a big question, but we did, so we did this Day of Impact now, I believe 3 times. And this is, really exciting because we would always bring in different topics and panels. And one year we had allies. We had actually a panel composed of only men allies. And what I found the most fascinating was, one, just how open these men were to, speak up and actually volunteer and raise their hand and say, I will come to this fairly vulnerable topic.
Yeah.
And, I guess where I'm going to lead the leaders is that, regardless, if you're a woman and you're looking for support, come to us, right? If you're looking to give it back or paid forward and you're a man or a woman or really anyone where we want to welcome. But if you're just like unsure and you're an ally and you want to do something, just start the conversation, and
Mhm.
that's okay. That's enough to just start the conversation and just be
Beautiful.
vulnerable about it.
Great. Rachel?
I think 2 things. I think if you are a woman looking to elevate your career or to re-enter the industry, then look to the empowerment bundles that Thrive has. We would love to continue giving as many opportunities as we can. That's what we're here for. And if you have some time, and like Sylvia said, a little bit or a lot, and you believe passionately in what Thrive is doing, then volunteer some time, as little or as much as you have, and help be a part of what I know one day is going to be a solution. But there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations doing really great work to help us get there. Thrive being one of them. So raise your hand and volunteer to help be part of the discussion and part of the solution.
Beautiful. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. And again, I appreciate you both showing up. I know it sounds cliche or corny, but there's a lot of people who just like to talk about stuff around the fringes, and that's okay. But here we tend to dive into some really cool topics. And so with that, Silvia, what are your parting words? What would you like to leave our audience with? And what would you like to share with me so I can share it with others down the road?
My goodness, just I think the parting words is do it. Don't just think about it, but take the action today and give us a call.
Good. Will do. How about you, Rachel?
Advocate for yourself and or be a champion for someone else. So if we can all help each other out, you got to say what you want. And then if you hear people saying what they want, help them make it happen.
Yeah. It sounds corny, but it's hard to take care of someone else if you're not taking care of you. And so I thank you. I remind people that all the time. You are that heart in the center of that most important first circle. Kids, people that who are following you close, your direct reports, etc. They're all wanting us, right? The people in the center of the circle. Not that we're the most important, but we have to take care of ourselves first. And I love your phrase, pay it forward. And that possibly might be on someone's tombstone, how he or she paid it forward. Their title, their organization name will never be on any tombstone. And I ask my clients all the time, what are we going to be saying about you in 5 years?
Yeah.
What are your kids going to say about you when you're not around and they're having a celebration of life? And that gets me going earlier in the morning. I'm older than both of you, but at the same time, at some point, they're going to fly on their own and they're going to look back and say, I'm so glad mom taught me that.
Yeah.
And I know it's true for me, because my parents multiplied when I was 9. And for whatever reason, I ended up staying with my dad, who married a woman who had 2 kids. So we were kind of like the instant Brady Bunch. But my mom has always been one of my best friends. And I guess that's maybe part of why I have the heart I have for what you all are doing. I don't know. Maybe it's just a goofy connection somewhere, but I appreciate you both. Thank you for bringing your hearts and your smiles and your intention. And with that, I'll say goodbye to Silvia Camarado, and to you, Rachel Humphrey, for all that you do in this industry, and continue to be great, powerful leaders. Thank you very much for your time. And again, this is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership. Don't forget to sign up for our Leadership Development Day series number 2 on Thursday, August 11th, where we're going to focus on building trust in culture and the ever important topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I challenge you to get to know what DEI really means, not just as 3 little letters, but what does diversity mean? How are you being equitable in your organizations? And frankly, how are you including everybody in your organization, or are you? So tune in for that. It's going to be a beautiful, powerful day. And again, thank you both for joining us. Remember to be kind, be considerate, ask somebody what you can do for them today, and go out and have a great day. God bless.